The tropical waters of Southeast Asia are home to some of the richest coral reefs on the planet. But hundreds of meters beneath the surface lies a world where time has stood still. Here, creatures from the far distant past still survive. Now, a team of scientists and filmmakers have joined forces to explore this largely unknown world. With a state-of-the-art submersible, they descend deep below the surface.
This is truly a living fossil here.
And discover prehistoric creatures that have survived virtually unchanged for over 400 million years. It's a lost world hidden in the depths of the sea, where primeval creatures have lived since the earliest times. Following the reports from local fishermen, the team set off in search of a strange fish that is said to lurk in these waters. It's a journey full of surprises and extraordinary encounters. And finally, after a year of exploration...
Oh shit, is this what, this could be it? This is it, mate.
Huh? Yeah,
we got him!
They discover a bizarre fish that few people have ever seen and encounter some of the ocean's most elusive inhabitants.
This is gonna be awesome.
It's the journey of a lifetime. The island of New Guinea in the Pacific Ocean. It's a wild paradise that still remains largely untouched by modern civilization. A scientific research vessel is here to explore the uncharted depths of these waters. The Elusia is equipped with the latest technology, including a deep-sea submersible that can dive to depths of 1,000 meters. The crew are carrying out final safety checks to the submersible Nadir. No one before has attempted to dive in these waters with a sub. The expedition is led by marine biologist Mark Erdman. Erdman is an expert in the ecology of coral reefs and has been studying them for over 20 years. He's worked in these waters for over a decade and knows them well. Their first stop is the Raja Ampat Islands off the western end of New Guinea.
Okay, Sarah, ready? Let's go.
The warm waters are teeming with colourful fish. Nowhere in all the seas of the world is there a greater diversity of life. Over 500 species of corals live here. They, in turn, support a myriad of fish that depend on them for food and shelter. Tropical waters are surprisingly poor in nutrients, but the corals produce enough food to sustain a vast community of marine creatures. Erdman has identified over 1,500 species of fish in the shallow waters here, confirming that this is one of the greatest biodiversity hotspots in the world. But Erdmann has long been wanting to explore the deeper ocean. It all started with an extraordinary discovery that he made over 15 years ago. He was traveling around the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia.
So it was on my honeymoon in 1997. We were in Manado and we were doing some diving there. And I always like to go to the fish markets just to see what the people are catching there. So we went quite early in the morning. My wife saw it first. Very intrigued by what this was. It was something she'd never seen before. So she called me over and asked me what this was.
Erdmann immediately recognized the bizarre-looking fish.
And I said, oh my goodness, it's a coelacanth.
The coelacanth is a very rare fish that was once thought to be the ancestor of all land-living backboned animals. It has armor-like scales and large bulging eyes, and fleshy fins that resemble limbs.
Very surprised to see. It's something I'd known as a child, but had obviously never seen a real one. So it was fantastic and a really big surprise to see.
Until a live specimen was caught off the coast of South Africa in 1938, the coelacanth was thought to be extinct. It had only been known from fossils over 80 million years old, and the discovery of a living specimen was a scientific sensation. It was over 1.5 meters long and weighed nearly 60 kilos. News of the strange primeval fish soon spread around the world. 50 years later, Erdmann himself found another coelacanth in Asian waters far from Africa. It was a different species, and once again, the strange fish captured our imagination. Since then, a few more specimens have been recovered in Indonesian waters, but only in a handful of places. Erdmann believes that their range may be much wider than we think. He's long had the dream of conducting a full-scale exploration of the deep Pacific Ocean. Other prehistoric creatures, such as deep-sea sharks and nautilus, have already been discovered here, and he hopes one day to find the coelacanth too.
There's an important question about why we have so many of those here. What about the deep tropical sea? And perhaps really try to unlock some of the mysteries of the deep tropical ancient seas here.
The expedition that Erdmann and his colleagues are planning will require much preparation and take over a year. From inside the submersible, the team will have an unobstructed view, nearly 360 degrees all around them. The sub is also equipped with a high-resolution camera that can capture even subtle shades of color underwater. With final preparations complete, the sub is ready for its descent.
I think that there's an extremely good chance that coelacanths are found right here. We're in the right place, and I'm extremely excited about this, and yeah, just ready to go.
Erdmann is excited and nervous.
Guys happy?
Very happy. Ready to go.
Let's go.
The sub weighs nearly 8 tons. It will be lowered into the sea by a huge crane. It's Erdmann's first dive into the deep below the coral reef.
Yeah, right to that surface. The swimmer clear, am I clear to vent?
Clear, you're clear to vent. Clear to vent.
Roger, venting now. Hey guys. Here we go.
Alrighty. Fingers crossed.
The sub slowly descends into the deep. The lower they go, the darker it gets. Very little light penetrates these gloomy depths.
Surface, Nadir. Depth now 34 meters. On the wall, over.
Nadir, surface, 34 metres on the wall, loud and clear.
Got a whole phalanx of little tiny squids right in front of the lights here.
Surface, Nadir. Depth 170 meters. Life support okay.
Are we on the bottom?
Yeah.
The sea floor is very different to the coral reef above. Bare and barren, there is little sign of life here. At last, they spot something. A strange, heart-shaped creature at the end of a stalk. It's a rare comb jelly that was first discovered in 1941 by the Japanese Emperor Hirohito, who was also a passionate marine biologist. This jelly-like creature lives attached to a rock at the bottom of the sea and feeds in the most extraordinary way. It throws out long, sticky filaments which catch tiny prey drifting by in the water.
Surface, Nadir. Depth 2.
The sub has now descended to below 200 meters and is entering what is known as the twilight zone. Very little light penetrates as deeply as this.
That sea urchin is beautiful. The red one right there.
The sea urchin looks quite different to most modern-day urchins, having fewer spines. In fact, it more closely resembles fossils from 200 million years ago and belongs to a primitive group known as the pencil urchins because of the thickness of their spines. The team notice another unusual creature on the seafloor.
This is truly a living fossil here. If we can get up on that video, I think this is one of the things that we really want to see. So these are sea lilies which are now on stalks, which this is basically exactly what they look like in the fossil record hundreds of millions of years ago. And you got one there, there's one up there, another couple over there.
The sea lily looks just like those found as fossils dating back 400 million years. It has changed very little over millennia. Perhaps sensing the sub's presence as it approaches, the sea lily begins to wave its arms. It may look like a plant, but it is in fact an animal. and if in danger, it will resort to a remarkable strategy. It detaches itself and uses its feathery arms to crawl over the sea floor in search of a safer spot. The sea lily may have retained its primitive form for millions of years, but it's also hardy enough to have survived into the modern age. Discovering these living fossils has been quite overwhelming for Erdmann.
Man, if we had a week of this, tell you what.
Stalked sea lilies like these were once far more abundant than they are today, and then found mostly in shallow waters. "400 million years ago, thick carpets of these strange creatures covered the sea floor, forming spectacular underwater meadows. The warm, shallow waters were rich in plankton, and there were few large predators. The nautilus, an ancient relative of the squid and octopus, hunted small marine invertebrates such as trilobites. Over time, more formidable predators began to appear. Primitive sharks and huge armored fish. With powerful jaws and the ability to swim swiftly, these formidable hunters ruled the shallow seas. While many prehistoric creatures became extinct, the sea lilies and some other species survived as living fossils in the twilight zone. The key to their success was their ability to adapt. During the age of the dinosaurs, even bigger and more ferocious predators appeared in the shallow seas. Large swimming reptiles like the plesiosaur. Now, slow-moving animals without weapons of their own made easy prey. Those that lived in deeper waters were largely unaffected by this struggle for survival. They're descendants of the living fossils that we know today, the coelacanths and the sea lilies. Here in the deep, there were few competitors, and it was too dark for most predators to find them. The sub has returned to the surface, the first dive completed.
Thank you, sir. It's a fantastic trip.
I would say it really was, it was otherworldly. It was truly a lost world that we had encountered. I think that if we had some more time here, that we would definitely find coelacanths.
The team start planning for the next phase of the expedition.
Take a look here.
Erdmann decides to focus his search on finding prehistoric fish, including the coelacanth. But where should he start to look? Coelacanth are thought to be nocturnal, hiding away in caves and rock crevices around 200 meters below the surface. There are hardly any maps of the sea floor around New Guinea. From the little information he has, Erdmann decides to focus on a small island called Wavulu, off the northern coast.
I think that Wuvulu looks to me from the maps to be probably the steepest, and the few divers that I've spoken to talk about very large caves there, so that could also be quite interesting. So that's the general habitat that we're going to look for. General topography is something with quite steep and with caves.
If coelacanths do live in these waters, Wuvulu could have the right kind of habitat. They set course for this remote and little visited island.
If we can confirm the existence of coelacanths here in northern PNG, it will be actually a very significant scientific finding. It will open the possibility that coelacanths are found, of course, throughout this western Pacific rim. So we're very excited about this possibility.
30 hours later, the ship has reached its destination just north of New Guinea. Wuvulu is about 5 kilometers long. The team head towards the shore. On the way, they encounter a fisherman in his small canoe. He's just caught an oilfish nearly 2 meters long. It's a deep sea fish, usually found at depths of around 500 meters.
Where did you catch this?
Yeah.
This is the place for them.
All along here, yeah.
It's definitely a good sign of good coelacanth habitat, which we already know from what we've seen with the satellite.
It sounds like coelacanths and oilfish may be found in the same kind of habitat. Erdmann and his team head towards the local village to see if they can find out more. The island has a population of some 900 people, most of them making a living from fishing. Everyone thinks they're a fish expert.
Have you caught any of these fishes
Yeah.
before? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Including this one? Huh?
Yes, but this one normally we used to catch this fish at night.
Right.
But what about the coelacanth?
This one is very rare.
Very rare. Okay.
Erdmann then gets to meet a veteran fisherman who gives him a crucial piece of information.
Ask you some questions. Have you ever seen that fish before?
I caught one.
You caught one?
A small one.
A small one, yeah? Did you catch that during the day or at night? At night, yeah? And was it also in the same kind of depths as this fish, or, yeah?
About 200 to 300 meters deep.
Yeah? Quite deep, yeah? Okay. Was that a long time ago, or?
No.
No? Just recently?
This year.
This year, yeah? Okay.
Erdmann asks the fisherman to take them to the spot where he caught the coelacanth. The Wuvulus have a traditional way of catching fish from the deep. They tie a strip of leaf to a stone and use it as a weight to lower the line down to 200 meters or more. After that, it's simply a waiting game. Next morning, a tropical storm is brewing. Despite the difficult conditions, the crew continues to prepare the sub for another dive. They want to get as close as possible to the shore. Then the plan is to follow the coral reef wall down into the deep. Once underwater, they're sheltered from the storm above. and they discover that the reef drops straight down.
Surface, Nadir, passing through 60 meters. Conditions are good, visibility is good. We're on the face of the wall.
They head for the location pointed out by the fishermen. A large fish is lurking inside a crevice. Could it be the coelacanth? No, it's not. It's a kind of grouper fish. The team seem a bit disappointed. But then a massive grouper swims right up to the sub's window. It's a giant, maybe a meter long. As groupers mature, they're known to move into deeper water. It peers into the sub, fascinated by the alien visitors. This is a novelty even for Erdmann.
Surface, Nadir, depth 200 meters. All systems good.
It's a fisherman's anchor. You see that? It's a little rock with a...
It's the weight from a deep-sea line. This may be the place where the fishermen caught the coelacanth.
Might be a stalked sea lily right there.
It's another sea lily, confirming that they're now entering the twilight zone, the threshold into the lost world. Creatures like this are few and far between. These waters are barren, sustaining very little life. But something is floating towards the sub.
Nautilus down there. They'd like that for sure.
It's a nautilus, another living fossil once common in the shallow seas, but now largely confined to the deep.
Surface, Nadir, we have a nautilus.
Its large shell contains gas-filled flotation chambers with which it controls its buoyancy and depth. And it moves by squirting water out through a siphon, a form of jet propulsion. The team have already had superb views of two primeval creatures. It's a promising beginning. They're now at a depth of 200 meters. Erdmann notices that the surrounding seascape is gradually changing.
Still, it looks like between here and here we might have some underinteresting caves. Pretty amazing.
The rocks are riddled with holes. These caves were formed thousands of years ago by wind and waves, eroding the limestone cliffs of a small island that has now sunk beneath the sea. There could be a coelacanth hiding in one of these crevices. The team decides to embark on a systematic search of the caves. Day after day, they dive for 8 hours at a time. But it's not easy to find a fish hiding in the dark. Getting the sub close to the holes and crevices in strong currents is a challenge. It seems an endless task as they check hundreds of caves.
Nothing seen.
Have coelacanth already been fished to extinction in these waters, or are they too shy to reveal themselves? It's frustrating, and they have nothing to show for their efforts but sheer exhaustion. The team face a difficult decision. Should they stay or move to another site? After much consideration, Erdmann decides to take his chances on a new location. They head east towards the Guinea Islands, 200 miles away. Far out in the Pacific, the Guinea Islands are still uninhabited. Untouched by man, the coral reefs are healthy and well preserved. And the waters rich in marine life. Erdmann hopes that here, in these pristine waters, they may find the creature they're looking for. The sub descends into the crystal blue water. The team have their hopes set high. Even at 200 meters, the light still penetrates. The water is exceptionally clear.
Wow. Oh, they're all around us. Holy shit. They're everywhere.
The team are astounded by the sheer numbers of fish at these depths. It's unlike anything they've seen before.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly, they come across a whole complex of caves.
Catacombs even.
Openings large and small line the surface of the rock. Some are so large that the submersible could easily fit inside. A large grouper disappears into a hole. This place definitely has potential.
Waypoint was ridge with interesting caves, but strong current.
To find their quarry, Erdmann has brought along a new gimmick. It's a compact camera called the drop cam that can be taken down into the deep. A bag of bait is tied to the front of the camera. And within minutes, it's attracted attention.
Oh, no, no.
A huge grouper has ripped the bait bag right off, together with the arm of the rig.
Surface, Nadir. We were just attacked by a very large grouper and he tore the whole bait arm off the front of the frame.
Back on the mothership, the technicians hurry to build a second system. They managed to assemble all the parts and even replace the frame with a sturdier one.
Is that okay?
Okay.
The camera is rigged again and the contraption will be left for the next 24 hours. The drop cam uses red light that deep-sea creatures can't detect. This should allow us to see the animals behaving naturally. A nautilus has been lured in by the bait. And it's soon joined by another. The newcomer seems to be watching the first with interest. Now it's trying to pull the first one off the bait. With strong-arm tactics and jet propulsion, it wrenches its rival off the food. It's a surprisingly vigorous battle between these two living fossils. Down in the deep, food is so scarce that every morsel is heavily contested. The large bag of bait continues to attract others and is soon the center of a feeding frenzy. It's the last day of the expedition. Aboard the Alusia, preparations are underway for the final dive. The dome is given a good clean, and the crew also decide to change the lights on the sub. One light is replaced with a red one, since it worked so well with the drop cam. It may decrease visibility a little, but it will ensure that they don't scare off the animals.
Still optimistic we could get them here. Looking forward to this last dive and crossing fingers we get the coelacanths cats on the last dive. It's happened before.
Surface, Nadir, depth 210, life support okay, heading south.
They have entered the twilight zone. It's time to switch off the bright lights, leaving only the red. It's working. The fish seem unperturbed by the large sub above them. And then...
Boris is going to go for him. He really is. Watch this. This is going to be awesome.
A massive grouper attacked the fish. A ferocious predator like this would likely scare off any coelacanth in the area. Erdmann decides to take the sub down even further.
Surface, Nadir, depth 270, 5 meters. Life support okay.
This deep, it's virtually pitch black, and there is almost no sign of life. It seems unlikely they'll find anything here. Just as the crew are debating whether to turn back,
Some fish down there with bright eyes.
White eyes. We like the white eyes.
You know what fish has white eyes?
Very suspicious. Maybe we'll go straight to that.
It's big too. Whatever it is. Well, there's a couple of them. Yeah. Oh shit! Is this what? This could be it.
This is silicon.
This is it, mate.
Yeah, we've got
We got him! High five!
You
Woo-hoo!
beauty.
We nailed him.
Where?
Right. Oh, at least I think that. Well, hold on. Let's make sure. They got it. Oh, they got something.
Yeah, it's them.
Are you sure? Or is it something else? There's something. They got a weird something on it. What is this? That's a cuss. That's not a sealy. That's something else. But maybe right behind it. Bizarre animal though. Look at it. Oh, shit. But there's a second one up above which. You gotta film this. Yes. You gotta film this.
it's a creature Erdmann has never seen before. It swims slowly along the seafloor. It has a large head like a coelacanth, but a spotted body. And beneath its belly, there are strange appendages or feelers. Erdmann has no idea what this fish could be. Is it possibly a new species?
Oh, I thought we had.
What are we going to call these fish? An unknown species.
Fucking weird fish, man. Look at these things.
Surface nadir. We have 2 coelacanth-looking fish. Variety unknown.
There is astonishment in the control room.
Sounds like they have just found a new fish. So it looks very much like a coelacanth.
That dorsal fin is an exact carbon copy of a coelacanth.
The strange fish shows little sign of fear even when the sub moves in closer. A second one is lurking further back in the shadows. Erdmann is fascinated and decides to follow the mysterious creature. But then, to their surprise, the fish starts to swim towards them. It appears to be interested in the sub. It's a close encounter of the third kind.
Wow, that is close. He thinks we're shelter.
So it was about a 1.2 meter fish, something like that. 1.2, 1.2.
It's a weird fish.
As it passes overhead, it clearly extends its curious appendages. Could it be using these to feel the surface of the dome? And then it even swims upside down. It clearly has 3 antennae-like structures on both sides of the body.
That's wild. It's got like the tripod feelers on the bottom. Weird animal.
The fish appears to stroke the rock with its antennae as if exploring the surface. The longest antennae extend just beyond the fins, and the animal is able to move them at will. The tips of the strange feelers flatten out to a point and seem to be soft and tactile.
Should we, you want to do some red light filming?
Yeah.
Erdmann switches to the red light to see if the animal will behave any differently. It heads off slowly towards the back of the cave. It seems to have lost interest in the sub and continues with its normal life. It swims into a narrow crevice. Though they wait, it doesn't appear to be coming out again. This must be its home. Slowly circling around, it appears to be checking out its surroundings, gently probing the walls with its feelers. For creatures that live in the dark, other senses such as touch become more important. Erdmann is intrigued. What is this strange creature? The crew on the surface try to identify the fish from the information they've received from the sub. They come to the conclusion that it might be a new species that was only recently described.
He says there's something there, but they're not as pronounced as
In fact, it turns out that the fish was first discovered in Japan in 2008. The specimen is preserved in the Museum of Natural History in Kanagawa. Dr. Hiroshi Seno, who first described it, explains that it's a very rare kind of deep-sea fish. It has a skeleton made mostly of cartilage and a strange, soft, gelatinous nose. There are only 4 recorded specimens of this jelly nose in the world. This is one of them. Dr. Seno points out its strange pelvic fins, which are typical of the species. They have evolved into 3 long, narrow fin rays, which look like antennae. It's almost certainly the same fish that Erdmann and his team encountered in the deep.
I think this video that we were able to capture of the jelly nose is probably in many ways more valuable than any video of coelacanths, given that this group is so poorly known and there's really no existing footage of anywhere near that quality. And in fact, most of the photos and video that we have are just simply from dead specimens. So this is really spectacular footage, and I think that there's a lot that's going to be able to be learned about this special group of fishes.
The jelly nose hides in narrow caves deep within the ocean, which is perhaps why it was not caught until the 21st century. Even today, we know virtually nothing about it and how it lives in the deep. The expedition's footage provides the first clues as to how this curious fish may have managed to survive at such depths. A tiny fish swims up to the jelly-nose and briefly comes into contact with its sensitive feelers. Surprisingly, the jelly-nose doesn't react. Even though food is scarce in this environment, the jelly-nose showed no sign of feeding the entire 4 hours that the team followed it. Like many deep-sea fish, it seems to conserve energy by swimming very slowly in the cold water, and can therefore survive on very little food. But how did the jelly-nose come to live in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth? Genetic analysis suggests that its ancestors evolved in shallow seas some 100 million years ago. At first they prospered, but were then driven into deeper water by the arrival of powerful predators. In this impoverished environment, they evolved to withstand periods of starvation. And this may be how the jelly-nose survived the extinctions that befell many other species on Earth. "66 million years ago, dinosaurs ruled the land and plesiosaurs dominated the seas. A gigantic meteorite, 10 kilometers in diameter, collided with our planet with catastrophic consequences. The intense heat burnt over half the Earth's forests. Giant tsunamis swept across the continent. It may well be this that wiped out the dinosaurs. The shock waves from the impact released underground sulfur into the atmosphere, which turned into deadly acid rain. The sulfuric rain killed off the plankton in the shallow seas, and many marine animals, including the plesiosaurs, are thought to have died of starvation. The acid rain, however, never reached the deep. It was neutralized by seawater on the way down. So many creatures that lived in the deep seas were able to survive. Already adapted to living in a sparse environment, these animals now had an advantage. Moving slowly to conserve energy and able to endure periods of starvation helped the ancestors of the jelly-nose to survive in the deep. That certainly is Erdmann's theory.
It's clearly something from the lost world.
It would appear that these animals actually have an ecology or behavior which is very similar to the coelacanth. So it's dwelling inside of caves, it's well camouflaged against the back of the cave, hovering there, but then if it's disturbed it will come out. From our limited observations from the submarine, it appeared that these fishes really are probably quite dependent on the caves where they're living. So I would say that the caves are probably a very important part of their habitat.
The year-long research has come to an end. Erdmann and his team have discovered a lost world of prehistoric creatures still living in the deep waters of the tropical seas. A nautilus, virtually unchanged for 400 million years, slowly bobbing through the dark water. And sea lilies standing tall on the ocean floor. It's a world where time stood still and living fossils survive. This barren environment, where most marine creatures could not survive, has cradled these ancient animals in a virtual time capsule.
Exploring these tropical seas just 200 meters below the surface, we found a very unique and special place, unlike anything that I've ever experienced before. The deep sea, of course, is a very vast area. Interestingly, very little exploration has ever been done in this region, and it's largely still a mystery. But by using cutting-edge technology like the Triton submersible, we've been able to really shed some light on this very unique place and understand much better this lost world.
The astounding encounter with the bizarre fish, the jelly-nose, that leads an austere life in the dark waters was the highlight of the expedition. It has revealed that the deep seas still remain a mysterious and unexplored world. Over 90% of our oceans are so deep that they're normally far beyond our reach, and they remain the least known part of our planet.